As seen from an orbiting satellite, a tropical cyclone offers its viewer a fascinating spectacle, an object of awesome beauty. But down on the surface, here the storm is a nightmare. Its power is savage and unrelenting. In one day, an average tropical cyclone releases the energy equivalent of over 420 megaton hydrogen bombs. Grasped by this unimaginable force, ships can literally be torn apart. Storm-battered propulsion and power units can render a ship helpless before the storm's fury. Loose flying and falling objects can cause injury or even death to ship's personnel. Caught in unsafe, unprotected harbors, ships may be beached or sunk. At best, costly damage to both the ship and its cargo is bound to result. Shore installations are also vulnerable to the tropical cyclone's vicious pounding. As the result of high winds, tropical storm surges, and flash flooding, destruction and death follow wherever the tropical cyclone thrusts its violence inland. For a ship, the best defense against these killers is evasion. To aid you in this defense is the purpose of this film. Depending on its geographical location, a tropical cyclone is known by many local names. In the Western Pacific, it is called a typhoon. In the Philippines, a bagyo. In the Indian Ocean and Bay of Bengal, it is simply a cyclone. In the waters of Australia, it's known as a willy-willy. Note that in the southern hemisphere, the cyclonic action is clockwise. The same tropical cyclone is called a hurricane in the eastern Pacific, the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, and the North Atlantic. But by whatever name it is called, it remains the same vicious killer. Let's review a tropical cyclone's characteristics. In the northern hemisphere, the storm comprises a well-defined cyclonic system with a counterclockwise wind flow. These winds may extend out from less than 100 miles to more than 800 miles in diameter. A barograph trace will show that pressure decreases when a tropical cyclone approaches, with very rapid falls in the vicinity of the intense low at the center, and subsequent pressure rises as the storm passes. The eye of a tropical cyclone may be as small as 5 or as large as 100 miles in diameter. In this area, the winds are light, the seas are choppy and confused. Around this calm eye, the tropical cyclone's strongest winds average from 90 to 150 knots. Gusts in this area have been recorded as high as 220 knots. Moving away from the eye, the winds diminish as they spiral inward from all directions. For purposes of orientation, it is convenient to divide the storm into semicircles with respect to its forward direction. For graphic purposes, the direction of movement arrow is always shown in a vertical position. If a tropical cyclone's center is standing still, the winds in the right and left semicircles will be approximately equal in intensity and opposite in direction. However, as the storm moves forward, the speed of direction is added to the winds in the right semicircle and subtracted from the winds in the left semicircle. This results in relatively stronger winds in the right and somewhat weaker winds in the left semicircle. Because of its stronger winds and resultant heavier seas, the right semicircle is considered the more dangerous semicircle. The somewhat weaker winds and seas in the left semicircle make it relatively less dangerous. To further illustrate these relative conditions, consider a ship caught in the more dangerous semicircle. Here, the wind and wave action would tend to carry it into the tropical cyclone's path. Conversely, a ship in the less dangerous semicircle would tend to be carried to the rear and out of the storm. The great wind stress exerted on the ocean's surface creates mountainous waves. Some have been reported to have peaked as high as 66 feet. As these waves move into areas of weaker wind, they diminish in height and increase in period. They soon become long rolling swells as they move out in front of the oncoming tropical cyclone. To an observer stationed overhead, it would appear that swells are propagating in all directions from the tropical cyclone center. Actually, swells traveling to the rear of the storm originate in the less dangerous semicircle. Those traveling forward originate in the more dangerous semicircle. These swells move much faster than the storm itself and may precede the center by as much as 2,000 miles. These advancing swells, coupled with a greater than normal amount of high cirrus clouds, are harbingers of troubles to come. As the storm approaches, the clouds steadily thicken. Rain begins to fall and steadily increases. When the sea and cloud conditions indicate an approaching tropical cyclone, the barometric pressure should be carefully checked and logged every 15 to 30 minutes. If a ship approaches the storm center from any direction, the pressure will fall. When the barometer begins to drop rapidly, the storm center is very close. Actually, a ship anywhere near this point on the pressure curve is already in considerable trouble. To avoid the storm, a ship's position relative to the eye must be known. To estimate the eye's direction from any point within the storm's circulation, the true direction of the cyclonic wind should be determined. When facing into this wind, the eye of the storm will be 100 to 130 degrees off to the viewer's right. A ship's radar can also be used to locate a ship's position relative to the storm's rain and cloud pattern. These pictures can sometimes be deceptive, so don't ignore the visual observations previously described. And remember, if you are able to make these observations, you are already within the storm's circulation. Evasion decisions must be made quickly. Today, ships of the fleet need not depend entirely on their own observations, thanks to the modern facilities of the Naval Weather Service Command. Sophisticated methods used by the Naval Weather Service make it virtually impossible for any tropical disturbance to go undetected. Orbiting weather satellites constantly scan the Earth's cloud patterns and radio back their pictures to receiving stations below. Located in the Naval Forces Marianas Headquarters building, Guam, the Fleet Weather Central continuously receives and processes satellite and other weather data, including observations radioed from ships at sea. Detecting a tropical disturbance results in immediate action. Orders go out to send weather reconnaissance aircraft to the scene of the disturbance to locate and track the tropical storm's eye position. Inside the storm, a flight meteorologist collects and analyzes storm data. Visual observations of the cloud cover and sea conditions are also made. All collected data are radioed immediately to all cognizant Naval Weather Service activities. Using the latest techniques, the data are processed to determine future typhoon positions and probable variations in the typhoon's intensity. The product of all these compiled and processed data is the warning message which is radioed to the fleet. Contained within the warning message are all data necessary to determine the danger area to be evaded. Note the typhoon position data for the present position and the forecasted 12, 24, 48, and 72-hour positions. These positions and their corresponding forecast maximum winds should be plotted immediately upon receiving the message. The track represented by these plots provides a general idea of the typhoon's present and predicted movement. By 72 hours, however, the forecasting accuracy degenerates badly. At this time, a capricious typhoon might be anywhere within 400 miles of the predicted position. At the 24-hour position, however, the forecasting error averages less than 135 miles and is 95% accurate. By considering this error, a reliable 24-hour forecast danger area may be calculated. From the warning message data, select the radius figures for over 30-knot winds at the present and 24-hour positions. Using these figures, plot areas representing over 30-knot winds at each respective position. Note that the 24-hour 30-knot area should have the 135-mile error figure added. Combining these two areas forms the forecasted danger area to be avoided. This area must, of course, be recalculated with each updated warning bulletin received. All evasion plans must take into consideration the ship's position relative to the storm. Because the typhoon could move unpredictably in any of these directions, a ship located anywhere in this general area must be considered as being in a dangerous position. On the other hand, a ship in this area would be relatively safe. If a ship is in the dangerous area and has plenty of sea room, evasion may be possible by crossing the T. This tactic involves crossing the path of the typhoon downwind to reach safer southern latitudes. Do not attempt crossing the T without considering the danger of the heavy swell preceding the storm. This maneuver could result in a slow and disastrous rendezvous. Consider also the possibility of the storm recurving. Though a typhoon normally slows down as it recurves, it often begins to expand in diameter. A ship too near may be encompassed by the expanding wind field. Take nothing for granted with these killers. As shown by these sample tracks of past typhoons, it is possible that future tracks will be highly erratic. Such behavior will definitely complicate the harried captain's typhoon evasion planning. Evasion tactics are often dictated by the geography of an area. For example, ships operating in the waters of the Gulf of Tonkin and South China Sea may find themselves boxed in by an oncoming typhoon. Since there is no other place to go, the only option may be to head south as swiftly as possible to reach the safer side of the storm. A similar situation exists along the southeastern coast of the United States. In this area, ships have little or no room to maneuver as hurricanes usually recurve along the coast. A suggested maneuver is to head south through the storm's less dangerous semicircle to reach the safer southern latitudes. Though hazardous, this tactic may be preferable to being battered in an unsuitable port. In the Gulf of Mexico, a ship can be literally boxed in by an approaching hurricane. At the mercy of the storm's movement, the ship may be forced to ride it out as best she can. Because this possibility always exists, it is worth reviewing the rules for maneuvering when caught within a tropical cyclone. To escape from the track of the storm, bring the wind to the ship's starboard quarter. Note the course, hold it, and run for the less dangerous semicircle. When the wind is backed or shifts counterclockwise 15 degrees, the ship has entered the less dangerous semicircle. Once in the less dangerous semicircle, again bring the wind on the starboard quarter. Note the course and hold it until the storm has passed astern. If a ship is caught in the more dangerous semicircle, bring the wind on the ship's starboard bow and hold it there. Make as much headway as sea conditions will allow. Keep changing the course to hold the wind on the starboard bow until the storm has passed astern. The final decision for the manner of maneuvering in a storm is, of course, the captain's. Every type of vessel has its own peculiar handling characteristics. Some ships ride better into the sea, while others handle better going with the sea. During a storm, or at any time, the captain is always the best judge of his ship's performance. Preventative measures to be taken by ships in port require an analysis of several factors. These include the tropical cyclone's forecasted danger area, the measure of the harbor, and the type of vessel involved. Small vessels with limited range would most likely seek shelter in port under any circumstances. If a port is considered an unsafe haven, all larger ships should sortie to seek safety at sea or run for a safe haven. Generally, the senior officer present will make the decision to sortie or to remain in port. Such a decision should be made as quickly as possible. Ships' captains should familiarize themselves with all typhoon and hurricane haven studies for areas they might be concerned with. These documents present an evaluation of the many factors that determine harbors as safe havens. An excellent example is Sasebo Harbor, Japan. Sasebo Harbor has most of the characteristics desirable in a safe typhoon haven. It is open to shipping 24 hours a day. The inner harbor, Sasebo Cove, is a nearly perfect haven. The bay is large, landlocked, and well protected on all sides by hills and mountains. The harbor is well equipped with repair and service facilities for a large number of craft. Berthing facilities are available for numerous small and large vessels. Within the bay, there are numerous mooring buoys and suitable anchorages affording good holding ground. Ships fortunate enough to find a haven with these qualities have little to fear from even the largest tropical cyclones. Regardless of the evasion plan, a ship in port or at sea must prepare for the worst. If the ship is to stay in port, all mooring lines should be doubled up and additional lines and cables should be run out. Additional fenders should be lowered to prevent damage to the ship's structure. If the ship is moored to a buoy, the mooring cable should be adjusted to obtain optimum riding conditions. A very short scope of cable causes excessive strain on the buoy and cable. A long scope causes greater tendencies to yaw. Use of the main engines during heavy winds will ease the strain on the mooring gear. Be prepared to get underway if necessary. Station special sea details and maintain all main propulsion, steering, and navigating equipment at full readiness. Before encountering heavy weather, the primary items to be considered are stability, water tightness, and secure stowage. To ensure maximum stability, pump bilges and fill all tanks to eliminate free surface effect while taking on ballast as directed by the commanding officer. Stow all movable heavy topside weights as low in the ship as practicable. Augment sounding watches to keep close check on empty voids for signs of leakage. Pump voids if necessary. To ensure watertight security, set material condition zebra, modified as necessary. Secure all topside vent covers and take other special measures as necessary to prevent flooding of the ship. All compartments must be checked for any loose stowage. Every loose item must be secured to prevent damage to the ship or bodily injury to personnel. Remember always, the time for taking all measures necessary for the ship's safety is while still able to do so. And one final word. When you receive that first warning of an oncoming typhoon or hurricane, prepare for the worst, but do everything in your power to stay out of it. It's a mean, miserable, and extremely dangerous place to be.